Okay. Jenny can give me a thumbs up if you see the slides. Okay, good. Thank you. So I'm Heidi Rabinowitz, and I'm a synagogue librarian at Congregation B'nai Israel in Boca Raton, Florida. And I'm a podcaster at the Book of Life podcast. It's a show about Jewish kidlit, mostly. And I'm also a past president of the Association of Jewish Libraries. And I am very pleased to share with you a place at the table, the Jewish community within the library diversity world. Now, if you've ever, well, actually, let me back up. Before I start in on the presentation itself, I just want to say that this is an expanded version of a presentation that I gave at the Joint Conference of Librarians of Color, and thank you very much to Phyllis for inviting me to reproduce and actually expand upon that presentation here for FLA. So if you've ever participated in a Passover Seder, you know we ask the traditional 4 questions about why is this night different from all other nights? And today I will answer 3 questions. Why, how, and where? Why should Jews be included within our definition of equity, diversity, and inclusion? How can you include the Jewish community? And where can you find books with authentic Jewish representation? So let's talk about why Jews need to be part of the diversity conversation. I'm going to give you a crash course in the marginalization of Jews and the interconnection between anti-Semitism and racism. Jews have always been a marginalized population, but sometimes it feels like Jews are being excluded from the diverse allyships where other marginalized groups are welcome. You can see the sign he's holding up, "What are we, chopped liver?" Here are some reasons that Jews need the allyship of other diverse populations. Here are some stats from 2019. That's the last year from which comprehensive reporting is available. Jews are about 2% of the US population, but we are the target of 12% of all hate crimes and about 60% of religiously motivated hate crimes tracked by the FBI. The next highest stat is for Muslims, who are 1.1% of the US population and the target of 13% of religiously motivated hate crimes. That is also a terrible statistic, but you can see that there is a large gap between 13% and 60%. The Anti-Defamation League reported in 2021 that the rate of anti-Semitic incidents is the highest it's been since they started keeping track in 1979. Anti-Semitism is on the rise, and this affects our daily lives. There are guards outside my synagogue library every day because of the danger of attack. And if you're wondering, I do have citations for all this information linked in my very extensive handout that I'm going to be sharing with you. So what is anti-Semitism? Anti-Semitism, like racism, is the water we swim in. For most of us, it's not the rabid KKK version, but its messages are absorbed into the subconscious. Conspiracy theories that claim that Jews control the media, or that Jews are all rich, or that Jews are all powerful and out to get non-Jews. These are all dangerous lies. Anti-Semitism is a paranoid mentality that uses Jews as the ultimate scapegoat, a false, oversimplified explanation for the world's complex societal problems. Here we can see British comedian and social commentator David Baddiel, and he points out in his book, Jews Don't Count, How Identity Politics Failed One Particular Identity, that Jews are Schrodinger's whites, seen as white or non-white, depending on the politics of the observer. Anti-Semitism is a core belief of white supremacy, and it is the pattern that racism was built upon. The first example of systemic biological racism is actually anti-Semitism. Since ancient times, Jews had faced religious persecution, but during the Spanish Inquisition in the 1400s, the first blood purity laws were created, defining Jews not just as believers in a specific religion, but as a race whose members, in their view, inherited impurity. And this formed the pattern later used to justify race slavery and racial genocide in the quote-unquote New World. You need to know that your Jewish neighbors are not safe. Anti-Semitic conspiracy theories are regularly spread by elected officials in the US government. Jews who choose to wear religious garb risk violent attack from strangers on the street. Synagogues, as I said, must hire full-time security teams and conduct active shooter trainings to reduce the risk from the inevitable attacks like those in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Poway, California, and Colleyville, Texas. Every day, when I go to work in my synagogue library, where I conduct story time for preschoolers all day long, I worry that this might be the day when an anti-Semitic attacker targets me and my students. Florida has a large Jewish population, especially here in South Florida, where I live. And with the rise of extremism in the state, encouraged by many political leaders, Jews are less and less safe here. I'm going to drop the citation for this graph into the chat because I just added this slide yesterday and I didn't have time to put it into the handout. I also want you to know, this is on a more cheerful note, I also want you to know that Jews are not all white or white presenting. It's estimated that approximately 20% of US Jews are African American, Latinx, Hispanic, Asian, Sephardic, Mizrahi, or mixed race. And these intersectional Jews face extra challenges because of the many aspects of their identities. Like disability or sexual identity, Judaism and other religions are identities which may or may not be visible to others. There may be more Jews in your community than you realize. Here's the marvelous Mrs. Maisel. Nothing about her appearance indicates that she is Jewish. Okay, now you've had a crash course in the marginalization of Jews and the interconnection between anti-Semitism and racism. And now I hope you understand why the Jewish community needs and deserves your support. So let's go on to talking about how libraries can help with these problems. Note that the suggestions I'm about to make can work for other marginalized populations as well. You can include Jews and Jewish representation in library spaces and in the diversity conversation in many different ways. Collection development. Even if your community has few Jews, or if you think there are few Jews, your readers need Jewish books so that they can meet Jewish people on the page, if not in real life, and learn to empathize with them. Jewish window books can create empathy and reduce hate. And also, I want to note that we are not promoting Jewish sacred texts or trying to teach non-Jewish readers to practice Judaism when we recommend Jewish books for all. We want all readers to read Jewish books as window books and bridge builders. And of course, thank you to Dr. Rudine Sims Bishop for the vitally important windows and mirrors metaphor. We just want to be seen and understood, as all people do. Bibliographies and displays. You can create Jewish-centric displays and lists and include books in your, or you could also include Jewish books in your generally diverse displays and book lists. Here you can see a display that includes both Jewish and non-Jewish books. This is a display of new books, but you can do the same thing with other themes, like mysteries, or books for foodies, or rom-coms. You can add Jewish books to the mix. Library programming, like book discussions, story times, speakers. You can include Jewish books or speakers among others. Hashtag Jewish books are diverse books. Here, for example, we can see author Joshua Levy talking about his very Jewish book, The Jake Show, along with Indian-American author Rajani LaRocca talking about her book, Much Ado About Baseball. You can recognize heritage months, like Jewish American Heritage Month in May and Jewish Book Month in November. Well, technically, it's the 30 days that lead up to Hanukkah, and that moves each year, but around November. So you can recognize Heritage Months with programming, with book lists, story times, social media posts, and so on. Workshops, seminars, conferences, library school events. When planning a diverse lineup, include Jewish speakers on your program. And community partnerships. Work with your local Jewish federation or your PJ library rep or nearby synagogues to find sources of programming. If you need volunteers, ask synagogues to tell their teens. Maybe helping the library could become a kid's B'nai Mitzvah project. Consider the calendar when planning events. The Jewish calendar is lunar-based, so as you know, holiday dates aren't fixed from year to year. When planning programs, especially in the fall, which is the main Jewish holiday season, double check to make sure you aren't conflicting with Jewish holidays. The biggest ones to avoid are Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and in the spring, Passover. Interestingly, Hanukkah is actually not a major holiday and can be scheduled over. And my handout links to Jewish calendar resources. Now, for Jews who keep the Sabbath or Shabbat, programs from sundown Friday until after dark on Saturday nights are off limits. So consider switching up the timing of weekend programming to make it more broadly accessible. And be aware that the calendar may affect other patron groups too, such as Muslims. Now, as I mentioned, Jewish American Heritage Month takes place in May and Jewish Book Month around November each year. Please find ways to recognize these months through programs, displays, book lists, and so on, and consider intersectional recognition, like inviting an Asian American Jewish author to speak in May when there's both Jewish American Heritage Month and Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. Both of those are in May. I want to point out that the Florida Library Association Conference, which was held from Wednesday, May 17th to the afternoon of Friday, May 19th, was scheduled in such a way that it did not coincide with any Jewish holidays, and it ended before Shabbat, which begins at sundown each Friday night. However, strictly observant Jewish librarians might still have had some difficulty. If they lived nearby, they might have had a time crunch trying to prepare for Shabbat, which can involve a lot of cooking and cleaning. If they lived far away, they'd have to travel home either before Friday night or after Saturday night. So this is an example of why it's helpful to consider the Jewish calendar when planning events. Now also consider your snacks at events. Many observant Jews keep kosher. If you're serving snacks, putting food out in its original packaging that displays kosher symbols, as well as serving uncut fruit, will ensure that kosher-keeping patrons can feel included and not go hungry. And here you can see a few common kosher symbols. They are in my handout as well. As past president of the Association of Jewish Libraries, which is an ALA affiliate, I would be remiss if I didn't tell you about our terrific organization, which is the leading authority on Judaic librarianship. Our members are librarians, educators, publishers, authors, and others from the book world. We work in universities, archives, special collections, synagogue libraries, Jewish day schools, Jewish community centers, museum libraries, public libraries, and more. We've got members from the Library of Congress, the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum, and Jewish collections around the world. And best of all, we've got a bunch of friendly Judaica librarians who are experts in their fields, and like all librarians are happy to share their knowledge with you. So please again check my handout for links to resources from AJL and beyond that will help you learn about Jewish literature and how to find authentic, high-quality Jewish books for all ages. Now, if you're interested in learning more about Jewish literary resources and Judaic librarianship, I've got a great opportunity for you. The Association of Jewish Libraries Conference will be digital this year, and it's coming up soon, this month, June 19th to 22nd. You can still sign up to enjoy this conference from the comfort of your own home, and you'll have access to the recordings for a whole year, so it works even if you're not available on those dates. The conference is held digitally every other year, and in 2024, it's in San Diego. So this year's conference is a lot more convenient for Floridians, and a link to more info about this is also in my handout. Now, I want to talk about a few projects that I've worked on through the Association of Jewish Libraries that you might find helpful. Because I'm a children's librarian, that's the main focus here, but my extensive handout also includes links to plenty of resources to help you with Jewish books for adults too. So this is a resource I created called Evaluating Jewish Representation in Evaluating Jewish Representation in Children's Literature. It works for adult literature too. This is a guide for libraries created to support non-Jewish librarians in their efforts to add authentic Jewish representation to collections. So it's for you. Please use it. Now, another project of which I am proud is the Love Your Neighbor series of book lists, which I worked on through the Association of Jewish Libraries. And this was created in 2018 as a response to the shooting at the synagogue in Pittsburgh. These are reading recommendations for kids and teens of Jewish books that are perfect for readers of all backgrounds, specially selected to introduce Jewish content to readers who might not be familiar already. There are 8 book lists currently available on a range of topics, and more will be coming in the future. Some other book lists that you might find helpful are AJL's Holiday Highlights lists, which recommend the best new children's books about Jewish holidays. This list comes out each spring and fall, so you can learn about what's hot off the presses in those publishing seasons. And these lists can help you diversify your Jewish holiday representation beyond Hanukkah, which, as I mentioned, is actually not even a major holiday in Judaism. The Sidney Taylor Book Award is basically the Jewish Newbery in Caldecott, and it's presented by the Association of Jewish Libraries each year at ALA's Youth Media Awards, and recognizes the best Jewish picture books, middle grade, and YA books each year. The Sidney Taylor Schmooze that you see here is a mock award blog started by me along with some other Judaica librarian friends. And on this blog, you can read reviews of Jewish books all year round at sydneytaylorschmooze.com. This, excuse me, this is my longest running project, which I've been doing since 2005, and this is the Book of Life podcast. I interview creators of Jewish Kidlit. It's like fresh air on NPR, but Jewish. And my most recent episode is an interview with A.J. Sass, a trans Jewish author, about his books Anna on the Edge, Ellen Outside the Lines, and Camp Quilt's Bag. And by the way, for Pride Month, I'm also posting a recommendation for a Jewish LGBTQ plus kids or YA book each day on the Book of Life's Facebook page. So feel free to check that out too. In conclusion, Jews want to be your allies, and we need your support in return. Here we see the sage Rabbi Hillel, author of The Golden Rule, reading the verse, "Love your neighbor as yourself," in the Torah. He said in the Pirkei Avot, the ethics of the ancestors, "If I am not for myself, who is for me? When I am only for myself, what am I? And if not now, when?" When indeed. Thank you. And please do check out my handout where I have tons of useful information and links for you. And if you have any questions, you can email me at bookoflifepodcast@gmail.com. So I guess I went through that pretty quickly because I see it's only 20 after, so I'm very happy to answer questions or go over things in more detail. So let me just make sure you can see me. I'll take a look at the chat. Does anybody have any questions in the chat? I don't see any questions in the chat. So if anybody has any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. Yes, put the link for the handout in the chat. I will do that right now. Okay, there's the link for the handout. Um, I see a question. How does one get on the Sidney Taylor Committee? Well, you need to be a member of the Association of Jewish Libraries. And every time that they have openings, they make announcements, and you send in an application and some writing samples. It's good to get some practice on evaluating books by either being a book reviewer for the Sidney Taylor Schmooze or for the AJL newsletter. Or maybe you're already a book reviewer for School Library Journal or something, I don't know, but something where you're practicing evaluating books is a useful skill that you need to have in order to be on the committee. You're welcome. Any other questions that I can answer about Jewish librarianship, allyship, where to find the books specifically? I can take you, let me pull the handout up onto my screen, and I can actually show you the handout and go through that a little bit with you since we do have time. Let's see. Okay, here it comes. Okay, so this is the handout, and you can see that it's kind of got an outline of what I talked about. So hopefully you weren't trying to take notes or anything because you didn't need to. But here you can see I've linked to a lot of the information so that you can, see that I'm not just making things up. But let me go ahead down to the part with the resources, because this is the stuff that I only went over briefly. I talked about some of these, the evaluation guide, love your neighbor, and so on. Let me move down past the ones that we spoke about. Okay, so here are some that we didn't really talk about so much. For adults, the Association of Jewish Libraries does not only sponsor the Sidney Taylor Award for children's books, also there is a fiction award for Jewish literature, Jewish fiction for adults. There's a reference book award, a bibliography award as well. We have not only the Book of Life, my podcast, but also there is a new podcast for adult books called Nice Jewish Books. My friend Cheryl Stahl is the podcaster interviewing authors of adult literature for that. Let's see, the AJL News and Reviews is for members only, but is an excellent source of reviews. If you join, that's a good member benefit. And the AJL calendar of events I've linked to on here because you are welcome to come to some of the events, some of them for members only, but there are public events as well. So that's another good way to keep in touch with issues of Jewish librarianship and literature. Beyond AJL, there are also many resources, so I've linked to some of those for you as well. The Jewish Book Council that you may have heard of, they are the ones who run the Jewish Book Network and help arrange for authors to come to book fairs and so on, especially during Jewish Book Month. In fact, the Jewish Book Council is the sponsor of Jewish Book Month, and they create beautiful posters for it every year. So you can see other review journals. There are also other prizes, book awards for adult books. The National Jewish Book Awards has children's categories, adult categories. They have so many categories, I don't even know how many they have. They have a lot of different categories, including more than one related to children's books, and a lot of different types of awards for adult books. There's Canadian Jewish Literary Awards. Oh, here's a new project of mine. I just recently started an Instagram called Kidlit Kippot. So, kippot, the kippah that a Jewish boy, usually a boy, wears on their head. Not necessarily a boy, because I've actually been finding a surprising number of illustrations of women wearing kippot. So I'm curating Jewish representation of kippot and other visual signals of Judaism in children's book illustrations on Instagram. And then PJ Library and PJ Our Way, if you don't already know, that's something useful. You can see down here on the list. That is a program that gives free Jewish books to families raising Jewish children. So through age 12. So I believe a library might be able to sign up to receive those books as well, but most communities have PJ Library representatives working locally, and you can chat with them about whether they can provide programming or books for you. Oh, here's one other thing that I want to make sure to let you know. The section where it says caution. Please avoid messianic materials. You can assign that something that might look Jewish might actually be messianic. It's quote unquote Jews for Jesus. It's not actually Judaism. It's a form of Christianity. And a sign that it is messianic is if they refer to Jesus as Yeshua. So if you see something that is purporting to be Jewish, but it's messianic, it doesn't count. Let's see, are there any other questions in the chat? Anybody have anything else that you want to know about? Let's see. Incoming ALA council member at large. More involved in increasing AJL's presence at ALA. Terrific. I will not be at ALA. But I know several colleagues will, and I hope that that you'll go to. There are some events, public events that AJL is hosting at ALA. So anybody in FLA or anybody here who's going to ALA, there's going to be a schmooze and nosh, and then there's also several other related events that if you give me a minute, I can find them and I can share those with you too. For weekend programs at a library, what is the best time to schedule them? Well, from the Jewish point of view, on a Sunday is the best. Because then it's not it's not overlapping with Shabbat at all. Let me find the information about the ALA events that AJL is sponsoring and involved with, because I think that those might be of interest if any of you are going to be at ALA. I'll find those real quick. In the meantime, while I'm finding those, I don't know if Jenny, if you want to field any questions verbally or something, because I'm not looking at the screen now. I'm looking to find those events.
Seeing any additional questions in the chat at least? Oh, goodness. Okay.
Okay, I'm putting into the chat some events that are taking place at ALA. Just copying and pasting the description. Okay, so those are in-person events. Okay, and the link to the handout? Okay, sure. Hold on, let me get that for you. All right, my handout is right here. Does that work? Hold on, I don't think that worked. The way it copied was weird. Hold on. Try this instead. Okay, now let's see. What was that long question over there? Let's see. Oh, Emily, you posted the same thing that I did about the ALA programs. Let's see. Okay, so that wasn't a question. That was the same thing that I was posting. So I hope people will come to that if you're going to be at ALA. Any other questions? Can you explain about not serving cut fruit? Oh, fruit that and vegetables that are like unprocessed are basically kosher. So if you don't do anything to it, like I guess you could wash it. But if you don't do anything to it, then it's still kosher. So people can partake. The link to the handout, that one that says drive.google.com, try that and see if it works. Let me know if it works or not. But Phyllis, good listening. That was a small detail that you picked up on. So good job.
Any other questions from the audience?
I'm going to put a different URL for the handout. See if that works. Oh, Erica's doing the same thing. Everybody's helping me out. Jinx, everybody's helping me out at the same time. Thank you, Erica. Um, okay, well, thank you so much, everybody, for coming to hear this information. I hope that you find it useful. I hope that you are able to put these into practice as you serve the Jewish community in your library, and that you'll think about these things when planning library events or book lists or inviting people to speak. Um, so it's about serving the Jewish patrons, but really, in some ways, is just as important, sometimes maybe even more important, that we want non-Jewish people to read about Jews, to hear Jewish speakers, and so on, because we are a part of American society, and we want to be considered as part of this whole diverse makeup of the United States. So please include us when you're thinking about diversity. It's not just well, I mentioned that there are plenty of Jewish people who are not necessarily white or white presenting, but also it's not just about skin color. Diversity takes many different forms. I see one more question. Would Sunday afternoon programs be best to not conflict with Hebrew school? Well, that's a very thoughtful question. Yes, I think that that would be the best, to not conflict with Hebrew school. Thank you for thinking of that. All right, great. Well, I'll hang out for a bit in case anybody wants to chat with me, but I guess that takes us to the end of the presentation. And please do check out the handout. I hope that you now have the working URL, and I'll make sure that Jenny can email it to people as well.
Heidi, thank you so much. This has been so interesting. Thank you for your time and your background and all this wonderful information. So I think I'm going to stop recording. If folks want to stay on and ask questions, that's perfectly fine. So let's do that.